Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and this week's guest is Ken Page, a renowned psychotherapist and author of the best-selling book, Deeper Dating: How to Drop the Games of Seduction and Discover the Power of Intimacy. I love that title. He's been featured in the Oprah Magazine, New York Times, Cosmopolitan, Fox News, Match.com, JDate, and more. He has also led hundreds of workshops on intimacy and spirituality. And he has also been highly acclaimed by numerous thought leaders, including Harville Hendricks, Ariel Ford, and Judith Orloff. Well, I came across this book called Deeper Dating after speaking to someone about, I had a dating issue. This was a couple of years ago, and they were talking about core gifts, and they referred me to Ken Page's book, so called Deeper Dating. And I just loved it because he talks about our gifts that we have, that we were born with, and these gifts that sometimes we push aside, or that we think maybe are, not working for our relationship because it's not working with this particular person. When in fact, it is like the most beloved thing about us. It is this thing that I don't even know how to explain it. It's a gift. Let's say we think of sensitivity. Oh, I'm so sensitive. I'm too sensitive. And what he, in fact, is saying in his book beautifully kind of wraps up this thing of like, oh my God, that sensitive person, that sensitivity of yours is actually, in fact, so beautiful. It is such a gift. And the person that can recognize that as a gift is someone that would be a really great match for you, rather than someone that complains about that you're too sensitive. So he takes us through a beautiful sort of a questionnaire, mini questionnaire, to help you discover what your core gifts are. And I think this is so fascinating and beautiful, because rather than throwing away or pushing aside something that you don't think is a gift, is to actually fully embrace it and really love that part of you. And so we really just jam on how people can get into such a deeper part of their relationship with their partner, how they can develop that depth by recognizing the core gift of your partner and also knowing what your own core gifts are. So, without further ado, I will leave you to the interview. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And on to the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and I'm so happy to have Ken Page today as our guest. He is a psychotherapist and author of the best-selling book, Deeper Dating: How to Drop the Games of Seduction and Discover the Power of Intimacy. So welcome, Ken. Thank you so much for being here.
Margaret, thank you so much for inviting me.
I actually found you through Jordan Gray. I think he interviewed you once, and I just really fell in love with the ideas that come from your book. And I got your book, and can I just say that it's so touching and it's so beautiful. I'd love to just dive in to some of the basics and like talking about core gifts. If you can explain to us a little bit about what that means and maybe how it links to relationships and even to dating.
I would love to. I would love to. And I also just want to say I have such respect for Jordan's work and for your work. So I'm really honored to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. This concept of core gifts is a concept that is so central, and I think so central to the blueprint, to the architecture of who we all are and how we're built, and also the architecture of deeper intimacy and how that works. And the heart of the concept is that the places we feel the most tender about, the most vulnerable about, often the places we feel the most shy about or the most protective of in ourselves are the places which are the kind of nuclear key to deeper intimacy. It's almost like, if you picture a target, and in the bullseye of the target is our soul, our most authentic, passionate, vulnerable, true self, a vast and beautiful, amazing mystery. And that's the truest part of us, but it's also mysterious and scary. And we often get hurt in those parts of ourselves. And it's where our unique genius lies. And genius is not an easy thing to bear. And the wiser path, I think, involves a lifetime of learning to bear what's in the center of our being, to bear it, to express it, to honor it, to learn how to handle its heat, its beauty, its originality. And that's a scary and intense thing, but it's the key to deeper intimacy. And so what I discovered in my decades as a psychotherapist and in my own life is that the parts of myself I was the most insecure about were the parts of my greatest beauty, the parts that I wanted to cover up to protect myself and get along in the world were the parts that were going to save my life. And that's the heart of the work that I teach, is that the beauty lies there in those parts of ourselves which are so tender, so passionate, so alive, living in the core of our being. And that as the degree to which, and this is a heavy thing, the degree to which we ignore or bury those parts is the degree to which we're going to hurt ourselves and other people. Because it's an act of quiet violence against our being. And the degree to which we embrace those parts and name them and treasure them and dance with them and love them and express them and find love around them, to that degree, our lives are going to be rich and generous and full and much more successful in love and in other areas. And that's what I call gift theory. And I call those parts of ourselves our core gifts, the places that we know are very vulnerable, very treasured, very important, but we're so careful because they've been stomped on in our lives.
Yes. Now, can you give us an example of something that most people come to you for, that a core gift has not been honored or cherished?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And it's so good to give examples. I'm going to give you a few different examples. And I think I'll start with me as the example, since I was kind of the original test case for myself. So I grew up in 1950s and 1960s Long Island, New York, to two parents who were Holocaust survivors, very amazing people, but people who really had to learn that the tender parts of themselves were the parts that the world would try to murder. So toughness was like kind of what it was all about. And here I was, a gay boy growing up in like the 50s and the 60s to these parents. And so these parts of myself that I treasure so much and which are very alive in me and very strong, the parts of me that are silly, the parts of me that are ridiculous, the parts of me that are goofy, the parts of me that are so tender, the parts of me that are so spiritual, all those holy parts were parts that there was no place for in the world. And so I learned to despise them, even though, of course, I loved them at the same time. And I think that other people, if you don't relate to the specifics, you relate to that kind of general feeling. And so my life just didn't work. And I was angry and hiding who I was, but treasuring a dream at the same time that one day I could express those parts of myself. And it was when I began to learn to value those parts of myself and treasure them that my life began to turn around. And also, I wanted a relationship, but I sucked at dating. I was the worst. I was the worst. I never, until I was 30, I never had a relationship that lasted more than 6 weeks. And here's why. I would see similar qualities in the people that I would date, and I would flee because I would feel the same disdain for them that I felt for my.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And, I could date people who were kind of unavailable, but the minute it was someone who was kind, decent, and available, I was out of there. And as I learned to treasure those parts of myself and lead with them, two unbelievable things happened. One, I started meeting people who were kind and decent and available. And two, I was attracted to them. So that began to change everything. And it was a journey that took many years and, led to my meeting my wonderful, wonderful husband and of having a family with amazing children and a life that's pretty rich with love. And it was because those parts of myself that I hated so much, I learned to embrace and treasure and nurture and be bold as hell about in my life. And that's the deeper journey to intimacy. And that's the journey that I teach in the book, Deeper Dating. That's one example. I'll just give another example. I'll give a few other brief examples. People who have qualities of deep generosity. That's a beautiful quality. And those of you who are listening who feel like you relate to that, that there's a deep generosity in you that maybe was either ignored, maybe it has been ignored or taken advantage of or stomped on or milked by people in your life. And so you learn to get protective of that part of yourself. Or maybe you end up keeping with people who take advantage of it. That's another way we protect ourselves, is actually by being with people who mistreat those parts of ourselves. Maybe you have a quality of loyalty, a deep quality of loyalty that when you start caring about someone, you're so loyal, and other people might not have that quality of loyalty. And so it's been bewildering and hurtful to you. Or maybe a quality of deep sensitivity, or a quality of fierceness where you speak the truth and it gets you in a lot of trouble. These are all qualities of core gifts that it's a lifetime of work learning how to bear their beauty and their genius. And in my book, I kind of teach a process to help, a very kind of rich process to help people name their own core gifts. But I could offer everyone here an exercise that will help you discover your own core gifts, if you want, Margaret.
Oh, yes, please.
Great. Okay, here it is. And these are general core gifts. And if we have a chance, I can also teach you how to name and understand your core gifts sexually and sensually. But here is an amazing exercise for discovering your own core gifts in your day-to-day life. And here's what it is. Have a journal. Take a period of 2 days where you jot notes. You just jot little notes. And in those 2 full days, what you notice is the interactions with the world that hurt you the most, that actually hurt your heart or make you feel slighted or uncomfortable or in pain. Those interactions that make you feel that the most in your day-to-day life. And every time you feel an interaction, notice the tendency to say, oh, I'm just being too sensitive. I need to be less sensitive. Don't do that during these 2 days. Acknowledge and put words to what hurts. And make bullet points to acknowledge everything. There might be something you hear in the news. It might be an interaction with a loved one. It might be something that you see in the street, an interaction between people that just hurts your heart to see. But just notice these things and jot them down. At the end of the 2 days, do a connect the dots process where you ask yourself, what are the themes? What are the common themes of the things that hurt me the most? And note what those are. And you will begin to see the places where you are the most tender and the things that you value the most, because we get hurt the most around the things we care about the most. And in those 2 days, do something else too. Notice the interactions that inspire you and fill your heart the most. Anything, your moments of downtime, your moments of petting an animal, certain interactions with people who you care about that just fill your heart, and note those and make little bullet points describing what they are, and do the same thing at the end of the 2 days. And when you notice, when you connect the dots of the things that inspire you the most and hurt you the most, you will recognize your genius in the world, the places you care the most deeply, and those are where your core gifts live.
Now, are you trying to find, let's say you find out, oh yeah, this is actually a gift of mine, and I should stop ignoring it or pushing it aside. Are you looking for a mate, therefore, that also has that same gift? Or
what a beautiful question. Yeah. Here's what I would say. It does not have to be the same, someone who has the same gift. For example, my husband is a tech guy. I am like the feelings channel, all feelings all the time. He's not big on feelings. He's big on the feeling of love. But he doesn't talk about his own feelings. He'll listen to mine. And that's really, really different. And that has been challenging. But my feelings feel so cherished in his presence that that's enough. So you don't need someone who has the same qualities. What you do need is someone who cherishes those qualities.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I love that. Now, when it comes to sensuality and sexuality, then are you is it the same approach?
Oh, very much so, very much so. But I'm going to kind of give you I'd love to give everyone a chance to think about what your sexual and sensual core gifts are. But I want to share a piece of research that is just so fabulous that I think will set the stage beautifully for talking about sex. And love and intimacy and risk. And here's what it is. There was an amazing study done, and it was a study with guys. And what they did was there were there's a river in California. I don't remember the name of the river, but it's a very fierce river, and it's got two ways to cross over it. And one is a low bridge that rides right over the river. And then another one is this high, scary, swaying suspension bridge that's like way above the river. Mm-hmm. And what they did was the researchers, a guy named Arthur Aaron, who's a brilliant forefront researcher in intimacy and love and sexuality, and a team of people. So what they did was they had women researchers pose as people just posing as I think it was psychology students, and they had to ask these men a range of questions, and they asked the men who were crossing on the lower bridge and those who were crossing on the higher bridge as well. They got some to cross on the lower bridge, some to cross on the higher bridge, and they asked them a bunch of questions. Well, the people who crossed on the lower, safer bridge gave less sexualized and erotic answers and not approach the women afterwards. The men on the higher bridge gave answers that were a little richer in sexual fantasy and were more likely to feel attracted to those women and actually to try to approach them. And what that says, it says a lot of different things. And what the researchers felt it said was that our psyches mistake fear for erotic excitement. But I think that there's a richer truth here, and that is that in the presence of existential risk, we become more alive, and hence more sexual and more sensual. And when you live risk in your intimate life, you will be more erotically alive and alert and present and excited. So these exercises that I'm going to give you are like creating your own suspension bridge above the river. They're
Okay.
exciting, they're scary, and they will stimulate your eros in beautiful, beautiful ways.
Okay.
So here are the questions. Well, there are three questions that we need to answer to kind of have a richer sexual life. And I want to say this is for people in relationships, but it's also for people who are single and want to be in relationships, because single or coupled, we're sexual beings, and you'll be able to answer these questions for yourself, whether or not you're in a relationship now. And answering them is going to help you find your right relationship. The first question is this, and it's a sacred question. It is the sacred ground of everything. Okay, so here's what it is. What do you need to feel safe in your sexual experience with another person? Take a minute to just think about that. That's first. Safety's first. So take a minute to think. Maybe you need honesty. Maybe you need to know that it's a monogamous container. Maybe you need to know that this person's going to be tender. Maybe it's going to be that you need to know that this person will be able to hear you and your needs. But you just take a minute, everybody, and think about what makes you feel in an essential way safe in a sexual interaction. Yeah. So that's question number one. Now we move to question number two. And these are questions that, I go into in great detail in my book. But these questions are kind of the heart of it. Question number two is, and this is a beautiful one, and even if you want to take out a paper and pen right now and write down your answers to this, you'll love what you wrote. So here's question number two. Question number two. Just take a moment to close your eyes and think about what types of interactions in sex and in sensuality touch you the most deeply, move your heart, make you feel love, make you feel connection, make you feel intimacy. And this is where we get wild in a peaceful way in sex. Because it may be because our responses are very original. Our sexuality, if anything, is original in so many ways. And so we need to name our sexual expressions and experiences. So maybe for you, something that touches you is just something like being with your partner and holding him or her and not moving, or just touching lips. Maybe it's eye contact. Maybe it's the words, I love you. It could be, maybe it's something wilder and crazier than that. Whatever it is, just take a minute to think about that in your sexual expression, what things have touched you deeply. And that's question number two. And you have a garden here. And you know what? So does your partner have a garden here to be explored. And then when you've asked those two questions, and if you're in a relationship, the concept is that you talk about these things with your partner and you find out what makes them feel safe. And first and foremost, you give each other that which makes you both feel most safe. The second one is you give each other whatever it is that makes you feel more connected in sex, double the amount of time you spend doing it, and watch how sweet that's going to be. And when you've done those two things, the next question is, and this is something, whether you're with someone or not, that's also so worthy to think about, is what really turns you on? What is really sexy and really exciting? What are your fantasies, your crazy things? And give yourself room to really name those and think about those. And if you share those things with your partner and they share them with you, and you both actively try to give your partner what touches them, what makes them feel safe, and what turns them on, as long as it doesn't go against the grain for you, your relationship will become so much richer. And equally important, you will connect to the living soul of your sexuality in the most beautiful ways.
Mm, I love that. And I think that there's a lot of times when we just don't even talk about it. Well, one, we don't really even uh, have the questions to even answer. And
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? And then, well, now we do. And then bringing it up and really being vulnerable and authentic about it. And, just expressing it to your partner or lover and being able to have them receive that information and give back in a bigger way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's such richness here. And it's a corollary to the very richness we've talked about in all areas of our lives. And the degree to which we treasure those parts of ourselves. And let me just say one other thing about this. We can't toughen up so much that these parts of ourselves become invulnerable. They don't become invulnerable. What we need to do is to find those precious people where those parts of ourselves feel treasured and alive.
Mm,
Gifts. We just need that. We won't get stronger just through willpower. We need to surround ourselves with those precious people with whom we feel an essential safety in our most vulnerable parts. Those people are gold. They're the path to happiness. And the more, this is an amazing thing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. It's like in my decades of work as a psychotherapist, this is one of the most beautiful and constant things that I've ever seen. The degree to which we treasure those parts of ourselves, to that degree, excuse me, fighting a cold, to the degree we treasure those parts of ourselves, to that degree, we are going to find ourselves meeting more people who also treasure those parts of ourselves. It really happens. It's amazing and it's unbelievable. And we're going to find ourselves noticing them and more drawn to them. And this applies with friends as well as with romantic partners. The more you treasure those parts of ourselves, the better the people you're going to find.
yes. And
Yeah.
what about, I know a lot of people, and this could even be for myself as well, we consider ourselves very sensitive beings.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we don't, I mean, see that as a gift. We're kind of like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
it's a curse. We're
Yeah.
weak. We see that as a weakness." Can you touch upon that a little bit?
I will. I will. Um, and Margaret, I am sure that your story, where you are now kind of like living as a warrior of truth, offering this podcast and having made this existential choice not to hide these parts of yourselves, but to share them. Your story is the story. That's the story.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I do have a thought or two that I want to share about that. Well, I have one sentence, but then I want to ask you a question, if I could.
Sure.
Great. Okay. So the thing that I want to share is one of the great markers of a core gift is that we have often felt like it was a curse. That's how
Hmm.
you know where your core gifts are. That because that's where your genius is. And genius is not an easy thing. And genius domesticated is genius lost. And we try to domesticate our genius to make it fit into the circles and squares that we thought we need to go into. But thank God that's not where beauty comes from. And I guess I want to ask you, do you remember a turning point for you that allowed you to shift your thinking from feeling like your sensitivity was a curse to actually believing it was a gift? Do you have any memories that you would share of that part of your journey?
Mm. There was something I read in the book that really resonated with me. And for a long time being, in the past, I was an ER nurse and now I work as a nurse practitioner and I have patients who come to me and are very expressive with their emotions with me. And in the past, I have had to really, put a very serious face and kind of a wall up in order to not let my sensitivity come through. And now if the tears flow, they just flow, and I can't help it. And I allow myself to be, empathetic and sensitive. And if they see the tears, then they see the tears. And I think that they appreciate that and see that I'm human. But I think I also don't feel like it's so much harder to hold that back than it is to just let it flow.
Oh, that's wonderful. That captures so much because, again, you had to step out of a box. Who you thought you were supposed to be and who you were trained you were supposed to be would make that feel like a weakness or, a weakness or a problem in you. And you turned it around and you said, no, this is who I am and I'm going to be that. And, your clients, you're not doing that with a client who's totally disconnected from their feelings. You're doing that with a client who's brave enough to share with you. And I'm sure people are so profoundly moved by that. And it would, but I guess also you would then draw a particular kind of patient, and it would be a patient who treasures feelings, and that would be your kind of patient.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's beautiful, and I relate as a therapist who sheds tears as well. I relate to that. That's
beautiful.
a great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, do you think that? I think a lot of women tend to beat themselves up about being overly sensitive, or finding men that certainly aren't appreciating that part of them. What would you tell them? And what do they do if they're in a relationship where they don't feel seen or heard?
Right. Well, okay, so I'm going to start with the second question first. Harville Hendrix, who's one of my great heroes, who created a therapy approach, a model called Imago Therapy.
Mm-hmm.
This is something he says. He says that we reach a point in our relationships where the thing we most need from our partner is the hardest thing for them to give us. And he says that's not when the relationship ends, that's when it begins. And he says, so beautifully, he says that's when work begins. So what I want to say to each person who's experiencing that is probably you are dealing with an accretion of years of your own tenderness around this stuff, maybe your partner's difficulty with that stuff, because it's really true that we choose people who often can't handle those parts of ourselves that well. And the work of couplehood is that they need to learn to become the person who can. And but that's work that takes a lot of fuel and fire and conscious awareness. So what I would say to everybody in that situation is, if you feel emotionally safe in a general way with your partner, share this with them. Do the work. I think Harville Hendrix' work and his book, Getting the Love You Want, is which teaches us how to do that, is the most effective guide that I know for that. Do the work, give your partner a chance, because if you are tender and ashamed or just feel vulnerable and very fragile around this stuff, which I relate to as I do, it's going to be easy for you to shut it off. And if you shut it off, you're going to blame your partner for that. So do the work. Try. Get the support you need to begin to treasure those parts of yourself and share them with your partner in a way that's non-defensive. That's one thing that I would say. This is the relationship doing exactly.
Okay.
The other piece that I would say is we are tender around those parts of ourselves. And what we need to do is surround ourselves with friends and family who treasure those parts of ourselves so that we can get stronger. Because we do need to get stronger around those parts of ourselves. Creative expression is another way. Like, what are the things that you do in your life that enable these core gifts of sensitivity to come to life. Do those things. It's going to make you more like a warrior, fiercer, more believing in who you are. And so that's really important and really essential. And those are, I guess, the two things: the expression of ourselves and the surrounding ourselves with people who value our sensitivity. Those are the things that we can do that are the best of all.
And do you think that, let's say they're currently in a relationship and they're not really being seen, but they express this to their partner, and their partner recognizes this as not a weakness, but in fact a gift that they have. And I could see that, then I see the relationship as progressing nicely if that other person's
Yes.
gifts are being seen and really honored. But if the person doesn't really get it, I mean, what would you say? Is this something what if you ultimately are with somebody that could care less about your gifts, doesn't honor them, doesn't treasure them at any level, which I think is really sad. Personally, I would have to leave the relationship ASAP. Is that just something that, can people change? Can this person that maybe doesn't recognize it, can they eventually recognize it? Or I guess I'm not sure if I'm being clear.
Yes, you're being very clear. And I have two thoughts on that. One is, and this is a general thought. Well, okay, first I want to say, if you're with someone who disrespects, dishonors, and won't listen to and doesn't want to try to get these parts of yourselves, I can't tell anyone to leave a relationship, but I wouldn't stay in that relationship because I would know that I would be deeply unhappy. Different people's circumstances might be different, but that's I distinguish in my book between two types of relationships: attractions of inspiration and attractions of deprivation. We all can be attracted to people who who can't really get us. They get us a little, but they ultimately don't want to get us.
Mm.
They're kind to us, and then they're also cruel to us. And these are attractions of deprivation, and most of us can be seduced by those relationships because we want to try to get the person to love us right. But ultimately, they're a painful process, and they're not worth it. And then there are attractions of inspiration, where we're attracted to people. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Because of who they are and because of how they treat us, and that those qualities about them inspire us. Those are the relationships that lead to joy.
Mm.
So, and that's just so, so important. But the other piece that I would say is this. This is a weird thing about people in love relationships. When we don't express our soul, our brain processes it as our partner is rejecting us. When we
Mm.
aren't brave enough to share it, the kid inside us feels like our partner doesn't want that part of us. And then we feel rejected, but they've never really had a chance. And the bottom line is, the language of your soul is a language that no one else in the world shares. And we need to teach our partners the language of our soul, the things that hurt us most, the things that move us most. Each of us needs to learn an entirely new language, and it's the language of our partner. And it's a different language, and we need to be brave enough to instruct our partner in that language of our tenderness and vulnerability. And we need to be kind enough to learn that language from our partner. If you've got a partner that just refuses to learn that, that's really a problem. If you have a partner that's open to begin to learn that, then do the work, baby, because that's a really good thing.
Mm. Oh gosh, I love that. And I think there's definitely vulnerability in there, but I think that being in any sort of relationship and really getting to such a deeper level, there must be vulnerability. You just have to show those deep parts of yourself in order to really have that depthness.
Yes, yes. And the more you do it, and the more that feels seen, the richer your relationship will be, and the richer you will be, and the more love and amazingness you're going to be creating in your life, because that's your soul. And our souls need a home in the world.
Mm. Oh, so great. I just love this. Well, tell us how my listeners can find you and what are you up to these days?
Oh, I'd love to. Okay, so here's what you do. You go to deeperdating.com and you will get, if you sign up for my mailing list, you get a free gift of these beautiful intimacy micro meditations that I teach.
Mm.
And you'll also get access to a lot of free programs I offer, a lot of resources that I share on a regular basis about amazing work like yours, Margaret, and also you'll get to hear about the courses I teach. So that's one thing, is you go to deeperdating.com. The other thing is you can buy my book, Deeper Dating, which is everything I'm teaching as a course in a book form.
Mm. And where are you based out of?
I'm in New York. But I work with people worldwide
Oh, great.
as a
And
coach and a therapist.
oh, great. Okay. So
Yeah.
great. And obviously online, you don't have to be face to face.
Right, absolutely. Through Skype, through telephone. Most of my clients are actually not from New York. They're from other parts of the country and the world. And, my individual work and my small group work and my courses are just such a rich part of what I teach. And I am launching soon an entirely new platform for single people to meet in ways that are inspiring and connected and online.
You're
So,
kidding. Wow. Tell me
oh,
more.
it's called Deeper Dating Online, and it's a way for people to meet and actually interact online by talking about the things that you care about the most, the things that excite you the most, meeting people, getting to share with them in very human, very safe, very structured ways. And then getting to interact through direct messaging and through profiles on my website. So it's kind of like a dream way to meet for a sensitive, caring, values-based person online. And I've been working on this for years, and it's just about to launch. So if you join my mailing list, you'll get to hear more about that too.
Oh my God. Fantastic. I love that. Sounds incredible, really.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
When do you think it'll be launching?
It's going to be beginning in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, great. Okay. So sometime maybe in April.
Let's see. I guess it would be early April, maybe even in March. The events are going to begin.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, I wish you so much luck with that. Whoever comes into contact with it, I'm sure that they'll be if you're using the deeper dating essence, that's really profound.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time today. I loved your book. And for those of you listening, you really need to get this book, read it, love up your core gifts, and and vulnerably share them as well with your partner. Thank you so much for joining. If you'd love to learn more about Ken and for all the show notes, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 22. And if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, go ahead and join us. Ladies only, sorry, gents, at www.margaretromero.com/Facebook. And if you'd love to know sort of behind the scenes of my life when it comes to pleasure, sensuality, cooking, all types of my daily musings, you can find me over at Instagram at Margaret Romero. So that is all for now. Have the most beautiful week and many blessings to you. Goodbye.